You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show. You know, I was almost going to say it's Monday, you know what that means, but half the time we're not on, so. You know, people might be like, no, it doesn't mean. I mean, it's crazy. But we're actually able to finally come on and review the final episode of Skeleton Crew, at least this season. Now, here's my question right off the bat, because we got Ted Adam Green chatted in like 4 chats, probably because he was afraid he couldn't make it or he wasn't going to be able to stay for the show. So we'll get to that in a second. But what do you think are the odds that it's going to go another season?
I'm hopeful that it's at least an 80% chance.
Yeah, I mean, I think because the thing is, you know, when they were talking about how the show was doing, you know, bad in the ratings or something, to be fair, it was based on the first 2 episodes. They haven't tabulated the rest of the show yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that they're giving a little bit of I guess it's just like it's a misleading thing that, you know, they're doing this.
Yeah.
And I mean, I always hate that because it's like, look, I get it. You know, you're trying to track this stuff, and look, we got to take the good with the bad. You know, I mean,
Sure.
just like there's, you know, shows that maybe we don't like, and, you know, people are either complaining about them or they like them. But then if you do like a show, you know, you have to be prepared that, hey, maybe that show isn't going to go or whatever. But yeah, I would say it's got a pretty good shot at going another season. All right, so let me get through these chats with Ted real quick, and we can comment on that, and then we can, you know, do our usual. By the way, it's like, I don't know where you guys are, but where we are is like brutally cold.
This is that biting cold, as they like to say.
It's like the biting cold, and you know, my house where we're doing this right now, it's like I think I have it at a good balance, right? Where it's not too cold in the house, but yeah, it's not going to cost me a ton of money to heat it. So you have to strike that balance. But Ted starts out saying, "Love the whole series and the finale. Some unanswered questions, but that's with most movies or shows. Was as much fun as I have had with Star Wars since 1977. Maybe not the best or most impactful, but certainly a whole lot of fun. Sense of adventure and action for sure. Goonies versus Space Pirates was a great blend. It's well written. Does make or explain any canon, but does not counter any, which was way more important for me. And then, you know, sorry for the long comment, but might not make the show. Yep, that's what we thought. I wanted to put my 2 cents in and see how it compares with you two great guys." Aw. Well, I mean, you know, I mean, overall, again, I mean, I thought another great episode. There was even a moment, you know, like when the X-Wings came in, you know, I kind of teared up a little for some reason. Like, literally, I'm not joking. And I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I tearing up like this? Like, I was really, it was the perfect execution right at the emotional peak of what they were trying to do. And, you know, I thought it was a really good episode. Now, the only thing is, I don't know if it was a really good season finale, though. That's the only thing that I'm mulling. And I didn't mind the fact that they ended it the way they did because, you know, it was basically kind of like what they've been doing the rest of the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I thought that they answered. I could see where some people might be frustrated a little bit by some of the questions they thought might be answered, or I should say answered more fully, but I don't know. I mean, I think it ended in a good spot where it was a satisfying conclusion, but yet obviously there's more to do in season 2. And I really wonder what Jod is going to do in season 2, like, you know, because he's just kind of there now, right? So his whole plan was basically thwarted at the end. So it's like, okay, well, is he just gonna hang around and be like, "Hey guys, sorry, can I join your society?" Or, you know, what's he gonna do? So overall, that's what I'm thinking on this one.
Yeah, I'll have to echo you. I think this was a great episode. I don't think it was a great season finale.
Hmm.
I think this would have been a great preseason finale. Like if this was the episode before the season finale,
Yep.
then sure. Yeah. However, this to me, it left a lot on the table. And it may have done it for, obvious reasons because, you're trying to get everybody to come back for season two. But I think in some instances, when you do a season finale, you kind of have to, I think you need to end the story just in case one, unless you are, let's just say halfway through, well, I can't even say that because that still wouldn't be relevant. So I'm gonna go back to my original point. I think that you have to end the story. Um, and if you're going to leave it on the cliffhanger, you're going to have to leave it with um, a story that's like, okay, we can start brand new, not continue necessarily from the last, especially for a first season, in my opinion.
Yeah,
So,
not
like,
to,
let's
not,
say if it was like a season two or season three, sure, I think it's better to carry over a story like that. Like what we said with Mandalorian, okay, we still don't know what happened with um, Moff Gideon. So okay, well, that has to be answered in the next season. Should there be one, or then this Grogu and Mando movie or whatnot. However, with this, um, I think that you left a lot on the table. Where it's like we still don't know who Jod is really. There's still a lot of mystery surrounding him. Um, there's still some things that um we don't know about. Like we never found out about at Atten as far as like this great work and all this.
well, we did in that sense. The great work was to make Republic credits. That was pretty much what it was. But
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, you weren't supposed to figure this out until you were an adult. Like, what was that? That's
right, and
my
like
thing.
why?
Yeah, why exactly? Because if it's
Because
just built,
I mean, I agree. It does seem like it was like, really? It was built up to that? Because that doesn't really seem like a big deal.
exactly, exactly. Like, okay, and it's like, what are you analyzing? Like, you're all these analysts, but
Right.
if you're making credits, you're not. What are you analyzing? So
Yeah, that's
that's what I'm
more
saying.
industrial, not, right.
Exactly.
Like,
So that's why I feel like it's still some things about that I'm like, are you saving this for another season or what? But overall, I really enjoyed the episode. I thought it was really cool. It had some moments in there definitely that were, funny, cute, heartwarming, action packed, of course. Um, I like the fact that, the kids were able to fight them now on their turf, which I
yeah.
thought that was cool because they knew where things were and they were able to navigate a whole lot better because they're on their turf now. So, but yeah, overall, I think it was a great episode. I just don't think it was a great season finale.
No, and that's the thing, is it didn't really have the, I don't know, like the pageantry and the, majesty and all that of a typical season finale. It just kind of felt like another episode. A great episode, but
Mm-hmm. Right.
another episode. And it just, I don't know, it almost felt like, yeah, it just, it's like on one hand, I know in my intro I said it was a satisfying conclusion, which I mean it was, but you kind of had to think about that because, you're really, your first instinct when the credits come up is like, that's it.
Yep.
I mean, it didn't really,
Exactly.
it didn't really leave you in a place that, like you said, where it naturally concluded this particular story arc and then went to the other. I mean, going into Jod's thing, just as an example, because you brought it up, okay, we found out more about him. A Jedi found him, trained him, a little bit, saw some hope in him, and the Jedi was obviously hiding after Order 66, and you know
Hmm.
was kind of just as scruffy and scrappy as he was, and kind of trained him up. But then you don't really. That's just like a very broad overview. There's
Hmm.
not a whole lot of detail. It's like, okay, well, I mean that. And my cat. If you guys hear meowing out of nowhere, it's my cat. Wow, he's really like, yeah, I guess he wants to get in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I just think that there's still more. It would have been nice if we had gotten maybe just a little bit more. Now, David joins us and he basically says, "Hello, gentlemen, it's Star Wars Day. I didn't do the homework. The Lions are out of the playoffs and I have COVID. Oh, happy MLK Day." Well, that's horrible. I mean, on
Yeah, I
one
know.
hand,
I mean, it sucks about the Lions, right? No,
yeah, right. Exactly.
forget him having COVID. Yeah, it's the Lions. It's really with no.
Yeah. It's like the Lions is a true tragedy here, him
He
having
would get
COVID.
COVID all the time. He'll be fine.
Plus I'm sure it's his fault too, so.
uh,
But I mean, hey, you
and
know
man,
what?
claim your healing. That's all I'll
Yeah,
say.
that's it. Well, I mean, you know what? That's definitely why you're watching us. Like, oh, nothing else to do. Kind of
Right.
trapped in the house. Hey, I'm glad you feel good enough to watch us.
Yeah.
So I remember the one and only, of course, when I had it, it was like the combination of, Omicron and Delta, and so it was
Yeah.
brutal.
You had the
Yeah.
super vid.
I had like the mutant version of the virus. So I was not in any shape for a few days, but hopefully you feel better, pull out of it soon.
Yeah, man.
And it's cool. I mean, look, I know a lot of times, even though we've waited, I mean, I swear, I think we're like the last people to review each of these episodes. Like the thing came out a week ago,
Tuesday.
tomorrow. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So tomorrow it'll be out a week. So literally, like every YouTuber in the planet has already reviewed this thing. And here we come with, our quote unquote fresh review. But sometimes it's actually good to do that because, again, not only does it give pretty much anybody who watches our channel, well, except for David, apparently, a chance to watch the thing, but it also gives people time to really, think about it, digest it, maybe compare their thoughts to other people, depending on how into this you're going to get. But, I mean, you're probably not going to scour the internet or whatever just to be like, I wonder how I'm comparing to, whoever. But the point is it really does give you a chance that by the time we come on and review any given episode, there you go. So, yeah, I mean, for anybody that's, just hopped on board, I mean, both Daryl and I seem to agree that it was a really great episode, just not really a great season finale. But I do agree, though, that even though there are some gaps, right? Like there's some things that we didn't really find out. We didn't find out all about Jod. We found out that the supervisor was a droid, but
Mhm.
we don't know how that all started. There's a lot of things like that. And then, the droid gets destroyed, which I actually thought was a pretty cool move on their part. That,
Mhm.
you meet the supervisor and boom, Jod just takes the thing out.
Right.
It's like, all right, that's
Like this is it.
kind of
Alright,
cool. It was almost like when he killed Brutus.
Yeah.
And here was Brutus, who was set up to basically be like a worthy adversary to Jod, and he just dispatches him instantly. So there is a lot of really great moments. Of course, the kids have a lot of really great moments. It was nice that the dad got to join Wim on the adventure, and it was kind of cool too because the other overall theme of this episode, I think, is that the parents being somewhat sheltered. I won't say totally because they seem to know that, hey, I know there's some stuff out there and we're trying to protect everybody from that, which is part of what I think they actually find out once, they graduate, become analysts. It's like, okay, they know they're just trying to keep the, this overall protective bubble
Hmm.
around, from the citizens. Because remember, these guys are like sort of not really in the higher up, probably more like the mid level. But I think that, it was great that in a way, because the kids actually have this experience that their parents don't, it was a
Hmm.
way for them to get introduced to that. And, you know, I just
Yeah, the
thought that
parents
that was
got a chance
fun.
to learn from their kids
Right.
and they had to learn how to trust them now because it's like, okay, we've been dealing with this guy like all this time. You haven't. So
Yeah, and
look.
all this stuff, there's like a firefight, they're chasing on speeders, and they got no fear at all. It's just like, oh, it's Tuesday, I mean, it's just kind of like they're doing what they've been doing. They're becoming more veterans of this thing now. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, I know the drill. I know what I'm supposed to do. And like you said, they know Jod. Jod knows them.
Hmm.
Because you could tell that the parents were kind of freaking out because it'd be like, Fern, you do. They're like, whoa, you guys are kind of familiar here.
Yeah, I think I think what was really interesting is that in different situations, the parents kind of had to um, make a choice, and they had to kind of face a little bit of what the kids have been facing.
Yeah.
And I think they were able to be put into their shoes, and the kids were kind of guiding them somewhat, like, "Hey, mom, we got to do this," or the crazy, of course, the crazy thing is where Jod has um the lightsaber to Fern, and he's like, okay, he's talking to her mom, like, look, you got to make a choice. Like, you want to do what you want to do, or you want your daughter to live, basically. And it's one of those things. So just that type of peril. Um, the fact that the parents were so trusting at first, like, of this, because they thought he was an emissary.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Oh yeah, he must be punished." And I just love how he just jumps into these roles and he can instantly just,
Yep.
like, yes, they should be locked up and watched over and blah blah blah. Like, and he's just making it. He just pretending that he's really this emissary. But I loved how the supervisor busted him
Oh,
because
yeah.
he was like, "Yeah, so you're an emissary. Why this? And then if you're a Jedi, you guys died in the purge, so you're lying about which one." you know and that kind of started everything into motion, which I really thought was cool. um I really enjoyed how the parents kind of had to struggle with some things, and then there was a little corny moment where Wim's dad is like, "Oh, Dad, can you do it?" He's like, "You're talking to a level 7 programmer." I'm like, oh my
Oh,
god.
yeah, I
I was
know.
just
It's
like,
kind of like, all right. Well, it wouldn't be complete unless it had a line like that, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly. And
it fits,
it's a kid
unfortunately.
show,
Yeah,
so I get it.
it fits.
It
It's,
fits. It's just
but
like,
you're
oh,
at times you are kind of like, there are some cliches that you can just leave on the table. Like you don't have to use it just because it's obvious.
exactly, exactly. Um, yeah, but I just love how all the kids stepped up, though.
Yeah.
And they were just kind of like, again, as I was saying, we were seeing the build up of them growing together as a unit, how they were like, all supportive of each other, almost like a no man left behind type thing.
Yeah, they did. They literally acted as a team,
Yeah,
and they all had their unique roles,
yeah, they all knew what to go after. Like,
what
okay,
they're
you
good
know
at.
what?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So that part was cool. But what was really interesting to me, and it's something the show does really well, and that is like when we last left it in episode 7, it almost looked like it was going to be one of those Anakin Skywalker moments. He just ignited his lightsaber, and
Oh,
it was kind of like that Anakin youngling thing. And you really weren't sure where that was going to go. And I was really relieved that they actually just picked it up right where episode 7 left off. And then you found out it wasn't really what you thought. It
hmm,
was sort of like the scene didn't end up playing out the way you thought it would. Sometimes, though, that's not always good. It was, I always point to the Last Jedi Force Awakens thing, where, she's handing Luke the lightsaber and then the credits come up. And then the Last
Yeah.
Jedi, he just chucks it. It's kind of like, okay, we didn't
Didn't see
expect
that
that either, but we didn't want that, though. I mean, not
That
all
too.
not all unexpected things are good necessarily, So,
True.
and it was really nice because you can, and this is what this show does so well. The kids knew who Jod was and what he's capable of, and he's like making kind of these very sinister, veiled threats while pretending to be the emissary. The parents are still kind of in that, like you said, that trusting, oh, he's an emissary.
Mm-hmm.
They're still in that. But the kids are actually paying attention to what he's really saying. And you could tell by their reaction. It was just the way that whole scene played out, I thought was really good.
Speaking of Jod, one of the things I thought was kind of a very it's a very interesting and kind of telling situation for his character, because he kept saying like, look, I don't want to kill anybody, like
Yeah, I know.
I don't want to do this, I just want to get this and just get out of here, like I'm really not trying to do this. And then you kind of see him though, like towards the end, when he sees like, okay, that his plan is failing, and he's just like, he's almost kind of like in a way like applauding the kids for, like, hey,
Yeah. Yep.
hey, you guys manned up, and did what you felt like you needed to do. I'm proud of you, but at the same time, I'm irritated because now I'm stuck, with all. He's a very interesting character because you see that he's really not necessarily evil.
Hmm.
However, he will do evil things to get what he needs, but he's not trying to be evil.
Well, the thing that I
And
think is funny about that is the fact that it almost goes back to what we said earlier. He seems to have a soft spot for the kids
Mhm.
because, like if Wim or Fern, I mean, at any given time they had a lightsaber to their throat in this episode. Some of the things that they were doing, like if that had been any other character, he would have just beheaded them instantly.
Yeah.
But because it's them, it's almost like he's got some sort of a, like
Attachment.
he can't quite bring himself to fully hurt him because there were so many times that if he had just followed through, let's say, everything would have been good.
Yeah, and he didn't have to kill all of it. He could just kill one, just as an example.
Yeah, pretty much.
And it's like, okay, but it's like, well, which one do I kill? Now, do because he kind of you could kind of tell he has a soft spot for Wim. He kind of respects Fern. I mean, Neil is just adorable, so it's like I can't kill him.
Yeah.
KB will probably be the only one that you probably could let go really, but again, it's still like they're kids, and I think he kind of sees himself like he was talking about, when he was a kid, and the Jedi came in to rescue him. Like I think he kind of sees that, and I think he's trying to offer almost a way like the Jedi offered him,
Yep.
except for his viewpoint of the world is completely different because he kind of had hope. And I think that's what you see in Jod. It's like that part of him that he thought died when, because he's like, he's giving that whole speech of like, the world is not like that. The world is dark, and there's only like this little bit of glimmer of light in it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those kids are that light for him though. And I think
Yeah.
that's why he can't find himself to go to do that, because the little bit of light that he does see, he doesn't want to lose that.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point, and I think that you're right. I think that he sees it's almost like those kids are his last connection to
Yeah.
whatever good that remains in him, and the heart that he has. And you're right, he is an incredibly complex character. I mean, through the whole thing,
Mhm.
I mean, I could easily see spin-off novels, comics,
Oh yeah.
video games, even, because he's just such an interesting and fascinating character. And, that's really hard to come by in the modern Star Wars universe. Most of them are either templates of other characters, whether they be classic characters or just, other ones that have been used, or, some of them are just not really all that fleshed out, or they're two-dimensional or whatever. But Jod's actually really just a fascinating character, and it's so hard now that the franchise is as old as it is to create something that feels new and fresh.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's one of those things where um bringing kids was just put things on its head because
Yeah.
like you're so used to dealing with older, if you want to say older kids, like in the sense of um like Luke Skywalker was like 17, 18, 19 years old,
That's a good
you
point
know.
too. Yeah, that these
So
are like
but
the younger, almost
these are
like
younger, like
Anakin via Phantom Menace or something.
yeah, like a little bit older than Phantom Menace, like before Attack of the Clones. Like this is that age
Yeah.
bracket,
Yeah, because you're right, they're probably like 12 or 13 or something.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think that's what makes this so um cool is because it's like you're dealing in a even in that age bracket that we're not used to seeing in Star Wars. We're seeing either really young, like Jake Lloyd's Anakin in, Phantom Menace, or an older version of, you know, these characters when you're dealing with Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen, um, and Attack of the Clones and so on, so forth. So I think that's what kind of makes this unique too, is that you have all, and it's not just one kid. You have multiple. So now they're playing off each other,
Hmm.
and they did that really really well. Um,
That's a good point too, actually, because being that it's such a, I mean, it's an ensemble cast, really, that usually you're right, you would have one or two maybe.
mhm,
But, in this case, you have what, like five, or
4.
is it four?
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess it is. Fern, Wim, KB, and Neil. Yeah.
Yep.
Or, all I have to do is do this and then I can just count. But, still, the thing that amazes me about this show, and this is definitely culminated in this episode, but really the whole show is really good at putting this out there, is the fact that they really spend time on each one of these characters. Like, they're fully fleshed out characters.
Yeah.
Usually you'll have something like this where you have a group of like 3 or 4 people, and of any age. I mean, this is something that Lucas did back in the original, A New Hope, because you had Han, Luke, and Leia, and Chewie, R2 and 3PO.
Mhm.
And every one of those characters was fully fleshed out, and you felt like you really knew each one of them.
Yeah, you knew them, and they knew their role. So it's like you knew 3PO was going to be the fussy guy. He was always going to be scared and complaining about everything, and you just kind of knew where 3PO stood on stuff. R2 was more the daring droid. He was fearless. Luke was, wide-eyed, bushy-tailed. He's green, but he's wants to get his nose in there. Han, cunning, veteran guy who kind of knows his way around the galaxy. Suave, charming. Leia, strong. Chewie was the only one you really didn't know that much about. But you just kind of knew that, like, okay, he just rolls with Han all the time. So he's kind of like his, you know, best friend or body. Even though it wasn't actually said, you could kind of just tell by the relationship, just to how they moved with each other, that they were really close. And then, of course, Obi-Wan being the sage, whole, teacher and whatnot. But these guys, yeah, you're right. They really did a good job of fleshing them out. We really see you got four. I mean, you got two sets of best friends. With Wim and Neil, and then you got KB and Fern, and
Yep.
they're opposites of each other. I brought this up before that they're, and that's kind of like sometimes we have friends like that, even in real life. And that's the thing that that's the sense of realism that you see, and it's subtle that it's almost kind of like the music in this. Like the music is subtle, it's good, but it's so subtle that you may not even pick up on it. And that's how you know it's good, because it's not drawing a whole lot of attention all the time. And that's kind of how their relationships are, because Neil is the more scary, hey, look, he wants to play by the rules. Wim is like, let's have an adventure. Fern is the brash, let's go out and just do stuff. KB is like, "Ugh, okay, fine. She's just trying to keep up. And now you have the four of them together trying to figure out. Wim and Fern are kind of trying to fight for a position of power between who's going to be the captain of the ship and stuff like that. It's just a really cool dynamic to see, and it kind of it reminds you of school. It reminds you of your own personal lives that you might have with your own friends. Whether you want to admit it or not. So yeah, this is a really cool batch of characters that I really want to see more of them. I really want to see, especially as they get older. Like I really would love to see like what they will grow into.
Yeah, it's funny because they gave Neil's species name finally. And
Oh, did they?
yeah, and I did not. I mean, they didn't really do it in the episode. I don't know how. I think it was revealed by one of the creators of the show
Mm,
was giving an interview. Yeah, you didn't miss it in the episode or anything, but I can't remember. But it was a pretty interesting thing actually. And again, I have to laugh honestly because here we were, like a year ago, year and a half ago,
right.
whatever it was,
I
and
already know where you're going with this
I
one.
had
Yep.
zero interest in this show, man. I mean,
Zero.
I remember hearing about it and going, I mean, the only fleeting interest, like just a flicker, a glimmer. It was the
With Jude
thing that,
Law.
yeah, it was Jude Law's involvement. When I found out that he was involved, I'm like, okay, this is not the kind of guy that's just going to go into a Star Wars movie. If he's
Yeah.
doing it, there's probably something to it. So for that reason only, I was willing to give it a chance because I
Yeah.
actually did go back. So after the last show, because remember we were talking about um all the upcoming Star Wars projects and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went on Disney Plus and I started watching was it Young Jedi Adventures? I was watching one of those or
Oh,
something
did
like
you?
that. Yeah, because I wanted to check it out just to see. And a lot of this stuff really is good once you get past the audience. But the thing that amazes me about Skeleton Crew, though, is the fact that here's a show. Like I said, both of us were on the same page too. It was like we didn't care one iota about this show. I mean, I think obviously
Oh.
we were going to watch it just to review it, but neither one of us really cared. I mean, we would report on news and stuff, but it wasn't because we were really into it. It was just because, well, you guys might be.
Mhm.
And, it wasn't until I saw the trailer that I'm like, okay, now I'm intrigued. But it's funny because now it's like elevated to, these are some of my favorite characters in the franchise. And,
Yep.
it's, I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of like an Ahsoka moment for me now. Because if
Yeah. Oh,
anybody
yeah.
remembers, and I
Yes.
always talk about this where, I mean, I hated the Ahsoka character in
Mhm.
when they did the theatrical premiere of, the Clone Wars, Sky Guy and R2E and all that stuff. And just, I mean, I understood her role. Like I knew why they wrote her in there, but I'm just like, okay, to me, she was like the Jar Jar of the Clone Wars. A necessary device, but one that I really wasn't into. And then, by the end of season 5, I mean, she had elevated to one of my favorite all-time Star Wars characters. And that's sort of
Mhm.
what's happening with this show. Is the fact that, I was hooked the day that I mean, the second
Yeah.
I watched this whole thing from the first scene of this show, I'm like, "Oh, this is amazing." And then of course, And we talked about this. I mean, if you guys missed any of the reviews, certainly go back and check it out because, we're always cranking on you guys about the watch time hours, which are growing, by the way. It's slow, but you guys are doing your job, and we appreciate that. But the amazing thing to me is that over time, you get this thing to where you're going, okay, when's it all going to fall apart? When's it, okay, it's good now. The Acolyte had moments too where we thought, well, okay, there's a few bumpy things here, but it'll be okay. And until it wasn't, and
Right.
it's, so we were waiting for that other shoe to drop for like maybe 3 or 4 episodes. And it wasn't until episode 4 that we're like, you know what? I mean, this thing is either maintaining or exceeding the previous episode's quality. And again, this thing is elevated to now I can't wait to see what's next, and I'm all into it, and I'll probably debut a Skeleton Crew shirt on the show at some point. I mean, it's funny how that works. And it's always the shows that you don't think, like you and I thought for sure that Ahsoka was just going to be incredible. And then when we saw the trailer, we're like, oh, this is, mind-blowing and all this. And then, we watch it. And again, it wasn't like we didn't enjoy the show. I don't want to give that impression, but it wasn't what we thought it was going to be. Filoni has work to do if he wants to be a live-action guy.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing about this franchise overall is that you don't know what to, what to really, I don't want to say what to believe, but you don't know what to believe in because on one, like shows that you look at, like, oh, the Acolyte or or Ahsoka, you hear the concepts for them or the characters and you're like, oh, okay. Man, I
That's a
can't
good
wait for
point,
this.
right? Because the premise of the Acolyte was incredible. We were so stoked for that.
Man,
I-
that was like one of my shows I couldn't wait. Like,
Couldn't wait.
yeah, I'm waiting with like bated breath pretty much for this thing. And then it's like, what am I watching?
Yeah.
This is stupid. And then, and then of course, a show like little piddly show named Skeleton Crew. Oh, a bunch of kids get lost in space and they're running around and trying to find their way home. And I'm like, yeah, okay.
Well,
Sure.
that's a good point
And
too.
then now
Actually,
I'm all like, man, like this show is like
I
I'm
know.
ranting and raving like this is the Acolyte. Like I should have been for the Acolyte. This is yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like I don't know what to believe in. So
That's man, that is so true because I remember first of all, we knew that Skeleton Crew from the get-go, and I'll give them credit for this. They definitely laid it all out there. Look, this is aimed towards kids. This is kind of like a Goonies in space is how, they described it themselves.
Mhm.
It's like, okay. And then I'm like, all right, well, they could go. I mean, when you just say Goonies in space, that can go in a couple of different directions. So you go,
True,
okay,
very
whatever.
true.
And then, yeah, you read it. It's like, oh, these kids basically, get lost on an adventure, have to find their way home. And I'm thinking, okay, so like a kiddie version of Battlestar Galactica. I mean, it just, that didn't really
Right.
sound all that intriguing. Like, what do I care? Okay, they get lost and they're probably going to get in all these dopey, goofy adventures and, we're going to get a bunch of, now this is pod racing moments. And,
Mhm.
I mean, you just thought that it was going to be like, well, kind of like that, and the other thing that I have to say too, because it leads into this point. It's something we brought up in the earlier reviews, but we didn't really touch on it too much after. And that is the kids it's a very natural thing. They don't, it's not like kids acting like a lot of these things. Where
Mhm.
you have that typical, feel of like you could tell when the kid's like saying lines, it's a typical kid acting kind of a thing you get.
Either they can't act or they can't. Well,
It's not
both
like
of them.
they're
It's kinda-
acting, they're reciting. It's
They're
more
reciting,
it's recitation more than acting is what it is.
and then you got the kids that overact where they're
With
doing
that,
way
yes.
too much.
Yes,
Of
that's
course, it's
another
like,
one.
okay, tone it down.
Exactly, right. Like take it down a notch. But this and the
This was-
amazing thing is, usually in any ensemble cast like that, there's always one. You know, there's always like it's like, oh man, it's so close, but then there's that one really annoying kid or whatever. And with
Yes,
this,
absolutely.
it's
None.
like they were all really good. I mean, they really I gotta commend the show, and the makers of the show. I mean, they really did their homework on picking the right kids that not only had the talent to pull this off, but the chemistry between each other was good. I mean, that's an insurmountable task.
Yeah. I mean, and going back to something I really appreciate that they gave us exactly what they said they were going to do.
Yeah.
That to me meant a lot as a fan. Like when you tell me, like you said, Eric, Goonies in space. Now, granted, that can go a bunch of different, but it is exactly like if you got it, it's right here.
Yeah, to the
And
point where some of the scenes were kind of lifted from Goonies, honestly. I mean,
yeah,
it's more
that
of an homage
ET
than a
and
ripoff. Yeah, well, yeah.
you know
That
that, but that type
Spielbergian
of
type thing, yeah.
yeah. And but when you look at shows like you said, Acolyte promises you one thing, and you're like, yeah, that's you oversold that one, you know. And we got that, you know, you got
You
that
know,
used car salesman thing, and you get the car, and you're like, okay, yeah, this isn't
I don't even know
what I
if I
thought.
would call it an overselling as much as a bait and switch. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
because the show we were promised was not the show we got. I mean, if they had actually said, okay, this is what it's going to be, right? I might have gone, well, okay. And I don't know, I might have maybe even given it a little bit, like it might have not have been such a shock to the system
Hmm.
because it was just so vastly different from what we were promised. And I think that that's a huge issue, really, for any show, but especially a Star Wars show, like the
Yeah.
most, demanding fan base ever.
Yeah.
This is a fan base you don't want to lie to or, do whatever because, they'll rip you apart in seconds.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's all I can say is just it was very refreshing to actually get what you paid for.
Yeah, like
You know,
exactly. Or
and
just, hey, this
that's
is
what
what.
it meant about
Well,
it.
but you know what? And I think that that's the reason why Andor did so well too, because that was another one that it
Yep,
basically
true.
gave us exactly what they
Exactly
said
what
they
you
were
paid.
going
Yep,
to.
yep,
Imagine
absolutely.
how that works, right? You
Yeah.
actually deliver what you say you're going to deliver, and because I think when you do that, because then what you're left with obviously is the merits of the show. Like, is the show good or bad?
Yeah, it's easier. It's a lot easier to critique, judge, whatever verb you want to use. But it's because like okay, if you're telling me this is Goonies in space, and then you give me Goonies in space, now I can tell you like, okay, yeah, you did an excellent job. You delivered on what you promised. I can't be mad. Like even if I'm not, like I said, even if I didn't want Goonies in space, I can still say like I cannot like it because I just don't like Goonies, for example. I just don't want to see a bunch of kids running around. It's just not my thing. However, if I'm basing it on the merits and of what you proposed, it's good because you gave me exactly what you said you were going to give me.
Well, it's not
However,
just that. It's also is the writing good? Is the direction good? Is it is the
well,
acting
that's what I
good?
mean because it's
I mean,
Goonies,
there's
because Goonies
well,
is
but I
a
mean,
classic,
but here's
and
the
you gave
thing.
me a classic.
That's true, but there is a slight difference though when you're talking about are you delivering what you promised? That's like step 1, which
Mhm.
will admittedly color whether or not you like the show because if they do the bait and switch thing, you're going to be angry about that. So even if it was a good show, you wouldn't, you're going to have animosity towards it. But what I'm saying is like, say they didn't, say they said, okay, it's going to be Goonies in space, but it wasn't. It could
Mhm.
still technically be a good show. even though they
You're
didn't, deliver what
you're with
they
the promise.
yeah, they just
True.
in that case, it's a mischaracterization, right? They just said, okay, it's going to
Facts.
be this, but it's really that. But
Facts.
it's still good. Now, granted, you're probably not going to have much leniency and, you're, like I said, because you're going to have probably some sort of negative emotion, whatever that may be, toward the whole thing, that might cloud your judgment a little bit. Like it might make you a little bit more biased. And then, of course, it plays into, do you like it or not? Because, we talk about this all the time, objectivity versus subjectivity. I
Mhm.
mean, it could be the best show in the world, but if you don't like it, you don't like it. And you're just going to say it's terrible because you hate it.
Mhm.
I always try to plead with people like, guys, separate your opinions from, the objective facts here, because you can have a show that you can't stand and still go, but it's good. I
Mhm.
just don't like it. Or, like B movies, right? I mean, there's always those, what a lot of people
Sharknado.
call, yeah, like the guilty pleasure stuff, right? Stuff
Mhm.
that's objectively terrible, but you absolutely love. Might be your favorite movie or whatever.
Yeah, campy stuff, or
Hmm. Yeah, anything. And some of that stuff is like that by design. I mean, Sharknado certainly was
yeah.
intentionally bad. Like they intentionally, I mean, it's kind of weird because in a lot of ways, for what they were trying to do, because they achieved it so much, and this probably goes into what you're saying too. It's like, okay, well, if you tell us you're going to give us something and you give it to us, there was the intention. And because the intention is there, they're going to actually make it that way, and that it'd probably be good.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the same the same way I look at the '60s Batman series, right? Okay, I understand that the Adam West, Burt Ward, I enjoy it because for what it's supposed to be and what it is. It's not supposed to be the Dark Knight per se. It's supposed to be it's supposed to look like the comic books, the early comics. So that's why you got the pow band, all the onomatopoeias popping out everywhere, and it's colorful and all that is because it's not supposed to be, the dark brooding Batman. It's the campy stuff that that you read
Right.
in the
But
comics.
and that's a great point because it's actually a very well done show.
And it's very well done because that's what it's trying
Because
to
that's
do.
exactly, they're
And that's yeah, that
intentionally
and that
do it, and they made,
exactly.
I mean, it's
It's literally like
fantastic.
you're watching a comic book. Like
Right.
that's
And
exactly
it's,
how it
it's well
looks.
done, it's acted like it's can't, but they
Mhm.
don't go too over the top. I mean, it's
Mhm.
extremely well done, but of course you'll get some people like, you're saying the fans that expect the darker stuff go, "Oh, it's terrible." Well, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
Well, it's, they're making a joke out of it or whatever. Well, it's that's an intention, and they're
See,
doing that
now
on purpose.
Batman and Robin, the film, was terrible.
Yes.
That's
That
different
exactly.
because you
And
tried to do the.
you know what? And I have kind of a soft spot for it. I mean, it's one of those almost like it's so bad it's good kind of things because there's something entertaining. Because that's another thing too. I had a friend years ago who was a singer in one of my bands. His name was Jeremy, and he was kind of a movie buff. And we would always like hang out at each other's houses and get pizza, watch movies. We'd go to movies. We were doing this like 3, 4, 5 times a week. Oh, to have that kind of time again. But one of the things that we would talk about when we would discuss movies is he sort of taught me a little bit about the concept between something being good and something being entertaining. He'd be like, no, it's not good. It's entertaining. And
Mhm.
I started really thinking about that. And, it's like, oh, yeah, okay. That makes sense. Because you also have to go into, if something is objectively bad, why do you love it so much? Well, you love it because it was entertaining. And sometimes that's the design. Now, of course, in the case of the 60s Batman, it's actually well done objectively,
Mhm.
and it's also entertaining.
Yeah.
But you can have that distinction, and a lot of times that's where I think we sometimes land with a lot of these Star Wars shows. It's like, well, it's in certain cases, like with Obi-Wan, for instance, it's almost good. There are definitely like really good moments in it. It's just there was not so good moments in it, and it tainted the show.
Hmm.
That's the problem. But with something like Skeleton Crew, week after week after week, they just nailed it, and it was
Yeah.
just, it was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it's a and that's one of the things. It's a thing that we have to kind of look at um, as we move forward with future Star Wars projects. Um, is you know the deliverables. Like, okay, are we delivering what we said that we're going to deliver,
Yep.
and then making that good? Like, okay,
Yeah.
whatever that may be, make it good. Like we said with the '60s Batman, make it good. Like, okay, we want to basically do an adaptation of the comic books to look like this. Okay, we just want to make a live action version of that. Okay, do it and do it well. And I think that's just the biggest takeaway from this. And the cool thing is that like none of the directors missed it, because that's the thing, that wasn't done by just one person. It's not like it was just directed
Yeah.
by Deborah Chow or Bryce
Mm-hmm.
Dallas Howard. It was directed by multiple directors. I'm talking about Skeleton Crew, by the way, for those.
Yeah.
And
Keep up, everybody.
and it's like it never wavered. It's not like, ooh, this director didn't get it. No, they all understood, as we all to say now, they all understood the assignment.
Yep.
and they got it done.
Well, and here's
And
another thing too, going on that point, because you also have to give some credit to the showrunners,
mhm,
executive producers and stuff like that, because a lot of that is them.
yeah,
Sure, you're bringing different directors, but they're the ones that are making sure that there's like a continuity and a
continuity.
consistency, and
Yep.
there's all kinds of things going on that ultimately continue, not just the consistency as far as the quality goes, but also like the same feel, because and this happened a lot of times. Smallville was a good example, Law and Order, CSI, a lot of those, where there's an actual tone to the show. It's like a tone, it's a
Hmm.
style, it's a,
Yep.
and you get these outside people coming in, and people would marvel, like, wow, you would never know. Unless you read the credits, you would never know that different directors and stuff were doing this, because
Hmm.
it all feels the same. Well, that's because the people that are there that are overseeing it are ensuring that all of that is basically consistent. And you're not seeing these like wild um variations.
Or deviations from
Right. Either in the tone of the show, or the storylines, or the quality,
the
or
look,
the
all of
look. Yeah, exactly. Like it all maintains a certain consistency throughout in all those. And you're right. The Skeleton Crew, they did a great job doing that. And that can't be understated. It's fantastic. And
absolutely.
I mean, I just, and it's funny because I think you read about a lot of things. Like Harrison Ford just gave an interview for that show Shrinking that he's doing on Apple TV.
Hmm.
And, he was talking about his co star. The reason why it made news was because just out of nowhere, he made a Star Wars reference. Like, nothing was prompted. It wasn't like anybody was asking him anything.
Yeah.
He just all of a sudden busted out like, well, it's kind of like Yoda says. And he sort of, like, he kind of messed up the line. He was trying to do the whole, like, do or do not, there is no try. He kind of botched it up a little bit. But, I mean, but the thing
Good
is,
for him trying.
for him to actually reference, and it's not even a scene or anything he was in. He just,
Right.
To hear Harrison Ford talking about Yoda would be like otherworldly to me. So it just shows you that, because it's funny because his co-star was just like, she was like way younger. And it's funny because she did a follow-up interview after that. And she's like, yeah, we're all Star Wars fans, but he doesn't really like talking about it, but we try to, but it just shows this enduring quality that even him being somewhat cantankerous about it, he even sees that. So it resonates with people. And so when you get a series like Skeleton Crew that does it right, then you're going to get that coming back. So I'm going to be interested to see the ratings now for the show as a whole. Now that we've wrapped this up and it's done, and they can somewhat tabulate all this stuff. It's going to be really fascinating to me to see where does this fall. And look, if somebody goes, okay, let's just say that it gets worse ratings than The Acolyte, doesn't mean it was a bad show. It's a niche show, right? It's appealing to a younger generation. Now, what I'm hoping is when you get all these people who are especially on YouTube, who are notoriously critical of Star Wars, all coming out and saying how amazing the show is, that might cause people to go, well, these guys are usually tearing on this stuff. If these guys like it, maybe I should check it out. So I'm hoping a little bit of that comes in.
Yeah, likewise. What would you rate this show?
I was just about to say. So we're gonna rate the episode, and then we'll rate the entire series.
Okay.
Well, and I'm sure you'll probably do the same thing. I'm gonna have to take a little bit off here because it was a great episode, but not a good season finale in my opinion. So I'm gonna give it a 7.5 for the episode.
You took the exact one out. Yep.
Really?
Same.
There you go. Yeah. Because I wanted to give it like an 8, maybe even an 8.5, but I'm like, I can't do it, man, because it was a season finale.
No, I agree with you 100%. 7.5 for the episode. I would probably give it a 8.5 for the series.
Right with you, right there with you. I was just, man, it's crazy. Because
we're in sync yet again.
I know. I guess, the head-to-head is somewhat of a misnomer.
We're not giving them what they promised.
Yeah, exactly. We're not right. We're not delivering, Well, look, we are two fans. We are of two generations. It is all things Star Wars. So technically speaking,
from a certain point of view.
Yeah, from a certain point of view, the title's a little misleading, but, we're pretty much in sync. But yeah, this has been fun. I don't know. What is the next? I guess probably Andor in April, right? Is that the next Star Wars thing that's coming out? I mean,
so.
It was only like a week and a half ago that we did this whole show on all these projects coming out and when and all this stuff. And here it is. The memories of Goldfish. Well, you're right. No, a lot of them were like
a lot of books and things.
That's true.
Keep up with all the of everything.
But the other part of it is, a lot of them would say, "Oh, 2025 or third quarter or whatever." It's like, well, that's not really a release date. But I think I think Andor, because I know that's got like what, April 22nd or something.
Yeah, April 22nd. That's right after Celebration because they're previewing the first.
Oh yes,
I think the first couple of episodes, maybe the first 2.
Right now, when? Oh, this is so stupid.
But
I should almost ask you this off the air because, well, when's Celebration again? We just covered it. We just covered all this stuff.
April 19th through the 21st.
Oh, so it's like
It's
soon
literally
Celebration
like
is
the day
done,
after it's over.
Andor
Yeah.
drops.
Yeah.
Okay, well, cool. Then that's probably. I'm sure we're gonna cover Celebration, even though I'm a little.
Right. It's in Tokyo.
Well, I'm a little grumpy about it because. Well, but then again, I don't know if I could this year. I don't know if I could afford to fly to Tokyo right now. So, but I remember I tried. What was the one year? It was like a couple of years ago or something. Maybe it was like when it was in Chicago or whatever. That I was trying to get tickets, like the press passes, so we can actually do our show from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody. Well, they probably took one look, especially back then. Like now,
Yeah.
at least we have, around like 19,000 subscribers. Back then, I think we had like 75 or, it's something really stupid. Ted is actually still with us, actually. And he says, great discussion on good versus entertaining. And as I get older, all I care about is entertaining. So I loved it. Looking forward to Andor now. Yeah, I mean, I get it. And, it's funny because those kind of discussions, if we ever launch this entertainment show that we keep threatening to do, those are the kinds of things that we would actually be discussing.
Yes.
Besides discussing actual, TV, movies, that kind of thing, like specific series, franchises, whatever, there also would be topic-driven stuff. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. So, yeah, we're more than likely when Celebration hits, we'll cover all the big like reveals and things that come out of that, interviews of interest, that kind of thing, and then obviously we'll start doing the reviews of Andor. So until then, just going to be discussion topics like what we normally do, and you guys are more than welcome to either hop on our Discord if you haven't joined that and suggest. We have a whole little channel in there dedicated to show suggestions. So you can drop your topic ideas for our show in that. Obviously, you can hit us up at Head to Head SW and on X, on Facebook, on Instagram, carrier pigeon, however you guys want to contact us.
Stone tablet.
Yeah, right. Smoke signals, what the Harry Potter owl or whatever. Hologram if you're a Star Wars fan. I mean, hey, whatever. There's a lot of ways, our Facebook group, Head to Head, is Star Wars community. You could talk to us there. Ted often comments on there. Yeah, there's a lot of ways that you guys can interact with us even when we're not doing this. So definitely check all that out among the other gazillion things you have to do. And look, again, I want to thank you guys for helping us boost our watch hours, trying to get us, let's start with the 3,000 watch hours, see if we can get us there. Just run this show and ad nauseum in the background or whatever. That really helps. And I'm not really sure what we're planning on talking about next week. It's going to be interesting because we don't have anything. Sometimes even if it's just like a normal topic driven show, there'll be something that, we'll say, oh yeah, let's save it for, whatever. But we at least I'm not aware. Do we have anything? Is there anything?
At the moment.
All right. Well, you guys heard it here first. Breaking news. We have no idea what we're going to talk about next Sunday, but one thing.
The Force will reveal it.
Yeah, it's going to be Star Wars. It's going to be Star Wars or something. But that's the one nice thing about doing these review shows is that, you don't have to think about it. You just automatically know. So
it's the school uniform. You just don't have to think about what you're putting
right.
on for.
Yep. That's exactly what it is. There's no mystery. There's none of that. You just know it's like, look, you just add another number and there you go. That's what we're going to do. But hey, you guys are going to drive it though. So thanks to everybody for chatting with us tonight. And until next week, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.